The following recording is a production of Kickin' Out at 2 in conjunction with the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network and is intended for private use only. For more information, head on over to facebook.com/Kickin' Out at 2 or our Twitter handle @Kickin' Out 2, along with searching Retromania with a W on any and all podcast platforms available to listen to archive shows such as this and all the great content of the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. Evergreen content at your fingertips anytime at your listening pleasure. And with that being said, we thank you for listening and hope you enjoy the show. This is a Thanksgiving double play here on Kickin' Out at 2. I'm your host, Dave Rosenbluth, and we'd like to thank you all for tuning in, pressing play, hitting download, liking, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast. This is a special double play episode. Originally, I was to be joined by a few individuals, and unfortunately, some circumstances beyond my control. I'll be doing this double play solo. First off, we'll be covering the ECW November to Remember 2000 pay-per-view, which was chosen by Dennis, who was supposed to be here with me recording this week. Unfortunately, Dennis had come down with an illness, and with scheduling conflicts, unfortunately, he could not reschedule, so I decided, well, I'll just do this by myself because I've done these before, so no big deal. Dennis, hope you're feeling better. Hope you're doing well. He'll be back soon. And then following that, I will be covering the top 5 Survivor Series Elimination Matches in history. My opinion, of course. I'll be doing that solo as well, and I'll get into the reasons for that later on. But before I do all of that, head on over to Retromania with a W, Retromania on Podbean. You can find this show and all the great content over there. Kicking Out at 2, Marking Out the Days, Gaijin Wrestling Radio, Hulkamania is Dead. So much evergreen content at your fingertips. Head on over there. Search Retromania with a W. You'll find this podcast, as well as all the others, by searching Retromania with a W on any podcast platform available. So, please keep up the support. Greatly appreciate it. Got some changes that I'm thinking about making in the coming year when it comes to this podcast. As podcasting seems to be evolving, it seems to be getting more visual, if you will, with videos. So I've thought about maybe doing some stuff on YouTube, maybe even some TikTok. Not quite sure. Want to make sure I got all my bases covered from a technological standpoint. So I'm looking to get a survey from you guys. So drop me a line on Facebook, Twitter @Kickin' Out 2, and tell me what you would like. How would you like to consume your content? Would you like to see more of this on TikTok? Would you like to see us on YouTube? How do you want to consume Kickin' Out at 2 and the nostalgic wrestling flair that I bring to you on a semi-weekly basis? So let me know. I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear how you guys want to consume the content. So I'll be taking all of those requests into consideration once they come rolling in. So Facebook.com/Kickin' Out at 2 or our Twitter handle @Kickin' Out 2. It's still Twitter to me. It's not X, okay? So be on the lookout. I'm, like I said, looking to make some changes in the coming year. I'm going to try out some different things and see what works and what doesn't work, and hopefully it's for the best as we try to evolve this podcast. It's a labor of love. I love talking nostalgic wrestling with you. I don't get paid for it. I think the last show I had like 30 people listen, so it's not about the amount of people that are listening, even though I greatly appreciate every 30 people that listen, or 15 or 20 or 45 or whoever. It's all about the labor of love. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy doing this with Dennis. I enjoy doing this with my brother Justin, and whoever else wants to be a part of it, and hopefully you all enjoy it as well. So the international numbers are pretty good from what I've seen in the last few months. I looked at some of the numbers on the Podbean stream, and you guys internationally are killing it. So thank you very much for listening to good old Dave Rosenbluth here talking nostalgic pro wrestling. I greatly appreciate it. Let's get the first half of this double play rolling for you here as we're going to cover ECW November to Remember 2000 from the Odeum Expo Center in Villa Park, Illinois. It took place on November the 5th, 2000. Roughly 4,600 people were in attendance, and roughly 50,000 homes purchased this on pay-per-view. Now, Dennis chose this event. Normally, I've been having you guys vote, but I wanted Dennis to take the reins, and Dennis chose this show, and he's not here to help me recap it because he's under the weather, like I said earlier. So, Dennis, if you're listening, thank you, because this was a solid waste of 2 hours and 38 minutes, I must say. You're not going to get a good review from me when it comes to this. There's a couple of bright spots, but for the most part, this show was not good at all. The pay-per-view opens with promos from the ECW champion Jerry Lynn, Just Incredible, Sandman, and Steve Corino as they preview the Double Jeopardy main event for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. Then we open the show with Joey Styles and Joel Gertner in the ring. And here comes the infamous Joel Gertner profanity-laced nursery rhyme. I made sure that I documented this word for word. Joel, Chicago, Illinois, where the beer flows like wine and the women have all been mine, because I'll shoot it at their chest and spray it at their breast. But when I can let loose in their faces when I like it the best. At the Odeum in Chicago, Illinois. 100% man, so ditch your boy. I spread nothing but jubilation and joy. Inspect her gadget and tickle her toy. Gertner. Anyhow, out comes Simon Diamond, who's upset that his name has not been mentioned around television. Simon reveals his partner Swinger is out with a broken orbital bone because of Joey Matthews and Christian York, but nobody seemed to mention that. He takes credit for ending Tommy Dreamer's career and wonders why that wasn't mentioned by ECW commentators as well. He then gets in Gertner's face by putting down his profanity poems. Gertner says he doesn't have an issue with him. He likes everything he does. He puts him over on TV, but he says he doesn't remember his ring name because he's an undercard jamoke. Simon attacks Gertner. Styles jumps on his back. Johnny Swinger arrives to get him some, which leads to a Tommy Dreamer run-in, who sets up Simon in the corner with a double stomp to the face with a steel chair. C.W. Anderson then arrives and attacks Dreamer, which then leads to Christian York and Joey Matthews making the save and leading to our first match. Simon Diamond, Johnny Swinger against Christian York and Joey Matthews. First few minutes, there's no commentary from Styles and Gertner, so we don't get to hear the action called. I'm assuming that's them selling the attack from Simon, or maybe it's a production issue. I don't know. Anyway, Cyrus arrives on commentary, gloating over Gertner being attacked and Dreamer taking a beating. The finish will come at 5 minutes and 21 seconds when C.W. Anderson enters the match. Spinebusters one of the baby faces, not sure who, while the other is crouched on the top rope, distracting the referee. Simon capitalizes and with Swinger delivers the problem solver stun gun DDT combo for the win. Post-match, the heels attack York and Matthews until Kid Cash makes the save, followed by a top rope plancha to everyone on the outside, which sets up our next match, an impromptu match, if you will. Kid Cash and C.W. Anderson. At the finish of the last match, Joey Styles returned to commentary, and Cyrus, let me tell you, he had the line of the night. He goes, "Joey, you're later than a rat's period." I had to pause watching it because it took me back. I was, for those of you that are unaware, a rat is known as a derogatory term used towards females. They're groupies, wrestling groupies, if you will. They call them rats. I don't think they have those nowadays anymore. I think that was that's a thing of the past. Wrestling's a more family oriented. You're not seeing many groupies outside unless there's events that I don't know about. But anyways, both these guys, they had good chemistry with each other. I've seen matches with them before. You can't find a bad match between these two, and the same could be said for this match. It's the classic high flyer versus wrestler dynamic, as Cyrus put it, and I couldn't agree with him more. Anderson would work on Cash's arm for a good portion of the match, ramming into the ring post, delivering some submission holds to the arm, like an arm bar, etc. Cash would counter with his high-flying style to get the best of Anderson at times. Several near-fall attempts from both men really picked up the pace heading towards the finish as Kid Cash would deliver a swinging tornado DDT for the victory at 10 minutes and 47 seconds. Fun match between these two. Crowd was into it. I enjoyed it. However, between the opening segment that led into the first match and then the finish of the first match leading into the last match, the second match, too much was going on to kick things off. This seemed to be a formula ECW relied on for their pay-per-views. It was go-to for them, and it didn't really stick with me. It just seems to be they went to the well, one too many times. But I get it. This is ECW in the year 2000. They were doing everything they could to stay alive as the future of the company was in doubt during this period of time. So I guess they were trying to create some sense of unpredictability for their shows, which I don't blame them for. But to me, it just didn't really hit. Next match,
we would get a 6-man tag team match featuring Spike Dudley teaming with Danny Doring and Roadkill against Hot Commodity, comprising of Chris Hamrick, Easy Money, and Julio De Niro, who are accompanied by Elektra. With the exception of Spike Dudley, I hate to say it, but when I watch this match screams Indie Elks Lodge. When I look at the field of wrestlers in this match, just looking at them, it looks like something I would have watched at an indie show. Not the match itself, because there were some decent spots in the match, but just looking at these guys, it was just like, man, like, there's a reason why these individuals, with the exception of Spike, of course, didn't make it to the big time, to the mainstream, if you will, whether it was WCW, WWF, TNA. It just, you just looked at them and it was like, it looked like they just plucked guys out of the crowd and had them, put on wrestler gear and wrestle. And I'm not trying to take away the talent from these guys by any means, because they're, all these guys were very athletic, but it just didn't, like I said, I look at it and just screamed like Indie Elks Lodge. They were trying to use the talent they had available, so I understand. And at least it gave some of these guys a chance to wrestle on TV, even though TNN stopped airing ECW program by that point because they had acquired WWF Monday Night Raw. The heels would beat on Doring and Roadkill until Spike Dudley would make a dramatic run in to save his team and clean house. Apparently, this was during a period of time when Spike was the on-screen commissioner of ECW. I didn't remember that, but then again, I didn't watch a whole lot of ECW at that point. This match was really nothing to write home about. I think I lost interest after I realized that it looked like a cheap indie wrestling show with guys whose gimmicks nobody cared about except for Spike. Who the fans were chanting his name the entire time, so I guess, brought some kind of level of interest to the match. The action would pick up towards the end when everyone got their shit in for a bunch of near falls, and the finish comes at 8 minutes and 23 seconds, and Spike delivers the acid drop to Chris Hamrick for the win. This is an okay match for what it was. Get a backstage promo from Rhino talking about New Jack and their match coming up. Rhino dropping F-bombs because it's ECW. I mean, for Christ's sakes, why wouldn't he? And then he says some really weird shit, like New Jack will have to shit his face out next time he sits on the toilet. I didn't get that. Beats me. Our fourth match, Chris Chetty, accompanied by Louis Dangerously, will take on Nova. Louis would run down the crowd in the city of Chicago in a pre-match promo, typical heel stuff, claiming that they can kick all their asses. He hypes Chris Chetty up as the toughest man in Chicago. And then Chetty grabs the microphone and claims when he wins, he stays. When Nova loses, he leaves. I didn't really understand that until Louis, who wasn't really happy with that. Chris Chetty then announced that this will be a loser leaves ECW match. So an impromptu booking by the, verbal agreement, I guess, by the participants involved. Two former friends, they're used to be tag partners. That seemed to be the dynamic they were going with. Chetty would get some color early on as he runs headfirst into the guardrail while Nova moves out of the way. I didn't really care for this match. And from what I was watching, the crowd didn't seem to care either. Nova would make a fiery comeback that got the crowd on their feet, but that was about it. The finish comes at 9 minutes and 48 seconds when Nova delivers a second rope kryptonite crunch, which is, in today's wrestling world, Sheamus's white noise, to Chris Chetty for the win. All right, Chris Chetty's gone from ECW. Nobody cared. Let's move on to a New Jack promo, which looks like it takes place inside in a maintenance storage closet in a boiler room. For a New Jack promo, I'm surprised we didn't get any F-bombs during this. Up next, the Baldies, I should say, Angel and DeVito, take on Balls Mahoney and Chili Willy in a flaming tables match. This is pretty much what you would expect from this type of match. Brawling, street fight style until it's time to set the table on fire and put the guy through it. The match, it went everywhere. It was all through the crowd. At one point, it led to a "we can't see shit" chant from the audience, which was kind of funny. At one point, Chili Willy and Angel are fighting on top of the balcony over the ECW banner. Atlas Security was certainly earning their paycheck that night, fighting through the crowd. Angel would powerbomb Willy at one point through two chairs on the concrete floor. That was a pretty sick looking bump, very diabolical, I must say. The finish comes at 12 minutes and 17 seconds when Balls lights a table on fire, engulfing it, and powerbombs Angel through it for the win. Like I said, this match, what it was what it was. Chaotic at best. If you expected anything different, then you're watching the wrong show. Bizarre segment here. Sinister Minister is backstage with one half of the Unholy Alliance, Tajiri, kind of delivering a Thanksgiving theme to the promo. You see all the fixings and the trimmings of a Turkey Day dinner. Then we get a shot of the table being set on fire with Mikey Whipwreck tied up and stuffed with an apple resembling a pig roast. I mean, this was ECW in 2000. This is what we got, man. I mean, Paulie let those guys do whatever the fuck they wanted, and clearly there was no supervision with this one. Our sixth match, Rhino versus New Jack for the ECW World Television Championship. I must say, I'm tired of watching some of these ECW shows, and you get that generic hip hop music that plays over the original theme that was Ice-T's Natural Born Killers, or Ice Cube's Natural Born Killers theme song for New Jack. Maybe TKO can work out some sort of deal with the WWE library with their next streaming deal, whether it's with Peacock or somebody else. But I'm tired of this generic music shit. Give us the real stuff, man. Come on. You got all this money, all the ticket, the money you're making off of tickets these days. Jesus Christ, you guys can spring a few bucks to get the original music on your archive library, for Christ's sakes. I thought this was going to be an interesting dynamic between these two, as Rhino's trying to wrestle and New Jack is just playing with his toys, his weapons, his plunder, baby. But it didn't really amount to that. Again, if you've seen one New Jack match, you won't need to see another. Even the referee wasn't safe in this match, as New Jack delivered a staple gun shot to his forehead. The finish would come when Rhino would eat a guitar shot like it was nothing. Then he follows up with a gore to New Jack through a table for the win at 7 minutes and 56 seconds. This match didn't hit it for me, I'll tell you that right now. I must say. I thought we were going to get a decent match, and it was what it was. Backstage, Steve Corino and Jack Victory enter Sandman's locker room and help themselves to his beer, only for Sandman to get out of the bathroom and brawl with Steve Corino as we get to our next match. It's the FBI, Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke with Big Sal Graziano taking on the Unholy Alliance of Tajiri and Mikey Whipwreck with Sinister Minister for the ECW World Tag Team Championship. Early on, this was a fun back-and-forth match from both these teams. The crowd seemed really alive during this compared to some of the other matches on the undercard from earlier. Whipwreck would hurt his neck early on in the match after delivering a double top rope whippersnapper. I don't know if this was an angle, if this was legit. Probably an angle. EMTs and officials would tend to him, and he's taken out of the match, leaving Tajiri to fend for himself as the crowd chants for Super Crazy. Wonder how this is going to play out. Oh, yeah, that's right. Super Crazy on cue comes out to help Tajiri and clean house of the FBI. So I guess this substitution, his inclusion in the match, is official. I mean, we had a verbal contract for a loser leaves town match earlier, so why not? The match would pick up with the inclusion of Crazy, I will say. Lots of innovative double team moves and counters from both teams. Crowd still really into this match. Probably the most they've been into a match all night. Crazy would hit all his signature stuff with his moonsaults and his planches to the FBI. Crazy delivering a scary balcony dive onto Big Sal on the outside to a huge reaction. And as that's going on, Tajiri's left by himself and becomes a victor of the numbers game, as he's on the receiving end of a bulldog by Little Guido for the win at 15 minutes and 47 seconds. Easily match of the night, in my opinion. FBI still your ECW World Tag Team Champions. We get a promo backstage with Jasmine St. Clair in the shower. She's the reason many teenage boys spent time alone in their bedrooms, if you will. The gangbang queen, as they once called her back in the 90s. Which brings us to our main event, a double Jeopardy match for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. Jerry Lynn versus Justin Credible. Jerry Lynn's the champion. And Steve Corino versus Jack Victory. With Jack Victory versus the Sandman. This is an interesting concept, as this was billed as two separate matches taking place at the same time. All four men are not allowed to interact with each other. Corino and Sandman can only eliminate each other, and the same goes for Jerry Lynn and Justin Credible. They can also only eliminate each other. The winners of each match will face each other for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. And the match kicks off without Sandman as Credible and Lynn start things while Carino is watching on in the corner. There are 2 referees in the ring as this is technically 2 matches taking place simultaneously. Carino would eventually get involved after going after Jerry Lynn, so much for following the rules, I guess, because it is ECW. Didn't really understand that psychology. Carino, who's scheduled to take on Sandman, why wouldn't he just rest up until the Sandman shows up? Why does he need to get involved? Didn't make sense to me considering how the rules were explained. Credible and Carino would work over Jerry Lynn until Sandman makes his way into the match. And, Sandman would do his traditional entrance with the beers in the crowd as the other 3 are fighting it out. And then once he finally enters the match with his kendo stick and chugging of a beer, Carino slaps the beer out of his hands and things just kick off from there. Jack Victory enters. He eats a kendo stick from Sandman. And then Jerry Lynn goes after the Sandman. Lynn, he's also a bloody mess. Credible gets some color. Won't be long before Carino gets some color too. Sandman brings a ladder in and uses it on the other 3. We see a slingshot somersault senton into the ladder from Sandman onto Carino. All 4 men would switch up with each other's dance partners and it pretty much totally throws the rules out the window. Lynn and Carino on the outside as Credible and Sandman fight on the inside. Carino finally gets some color as he's setting up the guardrail in the ring, bridged between a few chairs. Sandman fights him off and then counters by suplexing Carino onto the guardrail. Francine would get involved, leading to Dawn Marie entering for a potential cat fight. However, Carino puts a stop to that, kicks her out of the ring. Crowd didn't really seem too happy about that. The first 2 eliminations come simultaneously, which was an interesting finish. At 16 minutes and 21 seconds when Steve Carino delivers Old School to Sandman, while Justin Credible delivers That's Incredible to Jerry Lynn, eliminating them both and guaranteeing a new ECW World Heavyweight Champion. It's down to Credible and Carino. Both Sandman and Lynn, they're still on the outside as Credible and Carino are continuing this match. Jerry Lynn would attack Carino on the outside, then send him back in the ring, followed by Sandman attacking Justin Credible on the outside, sending him back inside the ring. A table would eventually get set up inside the ring, which leads to Carino suplexing Credible through the table only for a 2 count. Francine then enters the ring, eats a kendo stick from Carino after Credible sacrifices her to save himself. Dawn Marie ends up low-blowing Carino, then low-blows Jack Victory and walks off. Credible then lands several kendo stick shots to the head of Carino, who fights them all off and then counters with a super kick for the win. And your new ECW World Heavyweight Champion, Steve Carino. Post-match, Jerry Lynn hands over the ECW Championship to Carino, then slaps him in the face and walks off. Carino celebrates with Jack Victory as this show goes off the air. I must say, this was not a good show. Between the only real bright spots of this show was the C.W. Anderson match and the Tag Team Championship match. I mean, the main event wasn't terrible. I dug the concept, but they kind of got away from the rules a little bit. It would have been nice to see how they would have orchestrated 2 wrestling matches going on simultaneously at the same time without any of the combatants interacting with each other. But I guess, because this is ECW and there really are no rules, that's just how, the cookie crumbled. If there's anything, don't watch this show. I mean, if you want to see how bad it is, then dial up your Peacock and watch it. But this was nothing to really write home about. So before I get into the second half of this Thanksgiving double play, coming up in the month of December, Kobe Naida is allegedly going to be making his return, and he's going to be joining me as we're going to recap WCW Starrcade 2000, the last Starrcade under the WCW banner. Kobe was allegedly in attendance. Well, actually, he wasn't allegedly. He was in attendance for this pay-per-view, and he asked me to join the show so he can recap and review this show, and I thought, that's a pretty good idea. So Kobe Naida returning to Retromania finally. Can't do his own show, but apparently he's going to do mine, kicking out at 2. So looking forward to the Cobster, Kobe Mania, if you will, returning to kicking out at 2. And we continue this Thanksgiving week double play on Kicking Out at 2 with our Survivor Series countdown. That's right. We're going to be doing a top 5 Survivor Series Elimination Matches countdown here. And full disclosure, this wasn't the original plan, okay? The original plan that didn't execute properly due to either my lack of technological ability or Maybe it was something beyond my control. I don't know. But the original plan was a dueling top 5 countdown with my brother Justin and myself. We sat down, we recorded it. We had I think it was one of our best podcasts we've done. Back and forth, talking about the history of the Survivor Series elimination matches, going over some of our favorites. He had a 5, I had a 5, and when I got done and I stopped recording and I was going through my software, I believe I saved it, but for some reason it was deleted and the file was no longer there, and I could not retrieve it. There was no reference of it whatsoever. So due to scheduling conflicts, Justin being a single father and having to be a parent, unfortunately, his schedule will not allow him to come back and re-record this episode. So I thought, well, I promised it and I'm going to deliver it, so if I'm going to have to do it by myself, I will. So this is going to be a singular top 5 countdown covering, in my opinion, top 5 Survivor Series elimination matches. And I'll give you full disclosure on some of the matches that Justin thought that he placed in his countdown and go from there. But yeah, so I was a little disappointed in that, and it got me thinking, got the wheels turning a little bit as I talked with Justin afterwards and my wife. Maybe I go a different avenue with this podcast a little bit. I've been thinking about making some changes, maybe doing more of a video aspect of it on YouTube, maybe even doing short pieces on TikTok, starting a TikTok account. I don't have one, haven't had one, but some of the podcasts out there seem to drop little shorts every couple of minutes of sound bites from different podcasts. So I thought maybe that's the avenue I go. Maybe there's a larger reach for me on TikTok. Who knows? But anyways, yeah, I was pretty pissed off about that, to be honest with you, because I had this all planned out. Justin and I would record, and then we would splice it in with the recording that Dennis and I had covering ECW November to Remember 2000, and it just didn't work out. So I'm ending this Thanksgiving double play solo by myself. Hope you all enjoy it, and maybe next time technology will be on my side. Like I said, I don't know if it was me or if it was my software, but usually when I record, I'll close it out and it'll say, would you like to save changes? I clicked yes, and then for some reason a link popped up or an icon popped up that said, do you want to delete this file? And I thought I clicked no, but apparently I clicked yes and it was gone. And yeah, so that was a real bummer, because we my brother and I, when it comes to these podcasts, we're both, I would like to think, a wealth of knowledge of when it comes to wrestling, and we kind of bounce back off and forth from each other very easily. And I just thought the flow was really good, and there was good conversation piece, and it just didn't work out. Maybe someday it will reappear, and then I might put it up on the streams. But with that being said, before I get into the top 5, my top 5 Survivor Series elimination matches, I want to talk about the concept itself and the evolution of it and how it's evolved, which is now into WarGames, which is coming up later this weekend on at Survivor Series. My first earliest memory of the Survivor Series elimination match concept was, I believe, 1988 was the second annual Survivor Series, and the main event was Hulk Hogan and Macho Man as co-captains of the Mega Powers, along with Hillbilly Jim, Coco Beware, and Hercules against the Twin Towers, which was captained by the Big Boss Man Akeem, along with $1 Million Man, King Haku, and the Red Rooster. The one vivid memory I have of that show, not so much that match, but Mr. Fuji turning on Demolition and joining up with Powers of Pain in that 20-man tag Survivor Series match, which in my opinion, by the way, I would love to see the 20-man tag team format come back. There's lots of credible and talented tag teams in the WWE tag team division between Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. It'd be kind of cool if they did that 20-man tag all over again. It's a long match, and I get it, but I think just the visual of it with all this beef in the ring is pretty cool. And that year, Demolition was managed by Mr. Fuji. They captained a team. Powers of Pain, they captained a team with 4 other tag teams. So there was a total of 20 guys in the match. We saw Heart Foundation, Rockers, British Bulldogs, Brainbusters, Rougeaus. I think the Conquistadors, they won the match, I believe. Or they were in the last... Yeah, they lost the match. Powers of Pain won. So, yeah, bring it back, WWE. I'd love to see it. But when it comes to the Survivor Series concept itself, I honestly think that with WarGames now, I think there's room for both. I think there's room to make both a focal point of Survivor Series. Survivor Series has always been about team warfare. Teams striving to survive, as they say. Teams of 5 strive to survive, and then it changed to 4. I think it'd be pretty cool if you had both the Survivor Series elimination match and the WarGames match. Now, could you do it all in one show? No. That's why I think with Survivor Series taking place in a stadium this year, this is the first time Survivor Series has ever taken place in a large outdoor stadium. I believe this is the first outdoor Survivor Series in San Diego at Petco Park, where the San Diego Padres baseball team plays. I think this is the first step to getting to a 2-night Survivor Series. And I think if it goes 2 nights, I think we're going to see the concept of the traditional tag match and the WarGames on both nights. I can picture the first night being a WarGames match, and you have 2 Survivor Series elimination matches. And then the next night, you have another WarGames match and 2 more Survivor Series elimination matches. Throw in like a major championship match with like a big name like a CM Punk or Cody Rhodes or a Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns or whoever on either of those nights. The girls, Rhea Ripley could headline a match as the champion. I think there is room for it. If they were to bring back the brand warfare Raw versus SmackDown, you could have Raw versus SmackDown traditional Survivor Series matches with the men and women. You could have a Raw versus SmackDown WarGames match with the men and the women. I think there is room for it. I think eventually with this 2-night, with Survivor Series going to a stadium, it's a test to see, if they can handle 2 nights. WrestleMania's done it. SummerSlam just started it earlier this year. I think it would be natural progression that the Royal Rumble eventually we'll get there. I want to say after this upcoming Rumble in Saudi Arabia in January, I truly believe that Rumble will get to a 2-night format, and I think Survivor Series will be a part of that too as well. It's one of the original Big 4. It's a tentpole event. I think holding it in the stadium, they sold, I want to say as of right now, they sold like 35,000 tickets or something like that, which I would gather would be the largest attended Survivor Series event in its history. I think it will naturally progress to going 2 nights. And if it goes 2 nights, I could see the original 5-on-5, 4-on-4 concept come back. I can see why they've taken a break from it in recent years. I think there hasn't been a lot of thought process put into it. They just throw random people in there and, hope for the best. I will say that as a kid, there was a lot of anticipation for Survivor Series, the announcement of teams, whether you read it in the magazine, the WWF magazine, or Mean Gene Okerlund in the Survivor Series report would announce, like for instance, 1989, Hulk Hogan, Jake the Snake Roberts, and Demolition were a 4-on-4 team against the $1 Million Man, Zeus, and the Powers of Pain. Talk about an all-star video game comic book-like team with Hogan, Jake, and Demolition. I mean, it just came off the page when you look at that picture. And the anticipation of seeing those names forming together, it's essentially an all-star game, an all-star team. I remember one instance a number of years ago in 2006, WWE decided to announce the Survivor Series card each day and announce the matches, and that included those traditional 5-on-5 matches. And one of them was DX, CM Punk, and the Hardy Boys taking on Rated RKO, Gregory Helms, Johnny Nitro, and Mike Knox. That babyface team with DX, the Hardys, and Punk, that's another all-star team. Even though Punk was, in his early infancy of WWE, he was the face of that ECW brand. He was labeled the Future at that time. It still looked like an all-star team. You could say he was the weak link of that team because he was a new face in WWE programming. So the anticipation for when these teams used to be announced, and even like the opening montage intros of those Survivor Series, teams of 5 strive to survive, and Vince lists off all the matches with the teams, co-captains, Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man Randy Savage with Hercules and Coco Beware and Hellbilly Jim. I mean, just the energy that came from it is what made Survivor Series, is one of the things that made Survivor Series so special. So hopefully in the next, I'd say, year or two, I would hope that Survivor Series goes to 2 nights, and I'd keep it on Thanksgiving, okay? Thanksgiving weekend, because a lot more folks are home on Thanksgiving weekend. A lot of people take time off, and kids are home from school. They got that little extended break from school, and so it's one of those events that there's a good chance there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on it. And also, too, not to go too far down the beaten path, but the families and kids being home from school, there are parents out there that might be able to afford Survivor Series tickets to take their kids to go see for a weekend, especially in a place like San Diego where the weather is more appealing to go sit outside in November for a wrestling match. I think all of that eventually will come to fruition. And with that being said, let's get into this top 5 countdown. Now, coming in at number 5 for me, and it also came in at number 5 for my brother Justin that we recorded earlier, was the wild card match from Survivor Series of 1995. This was a 4-on-4 match, and this was the first year that Survivor Series was not incorporated into the Thanksgiving week tradition. It did not take place Thanksgiving Eve or even Thanksgiving night like some of the previous Survivor Series. But this event saw a wild card match, which I thought was unique at its time. I know it didn't last very long, and people, it didn't really, I guess it just didn't go over well with management and creative. But it was the first of its kind where you saw a mixture of baby faces and heels teaming together. Now, I know in recent years with the Raw and SmackDown brand rivalry, you kind of got the best of the best from those brands, and there was a mixture of heels and baby faces. It was kind of a wild card concept, but to see the mixture of heels and baby faces in 1995 was different and unique. And I'll round out the teams. The first team saw Razor Ramon, Yokozuna, Owen Hart, and Dean Douglas as a team taking on the team of Shawn Michaels, the British Bulldog, Psycho Sid, and newcomer Ahmed Johnson. Now think about all the variables. If you go back and you remember, some of you may not, but some of you that are listening might remember, in some form or another in that recent time period, these guys were all involved with each other somehow on television, with the exception of Ahmed Johnson. He was the virtual newcomer. He was the wild card, so to speak. Now, you go back to Shawn Michaels. Let's talk about Shawn Michaels' team. Shawn Michaels and Psycho Sid. They were an on-screen pairing earlier in the year when Sid was Shawn's bodyguard when he went into the main event of WrestleMania 11 against Diesel. The next night, Sid turned on Shawn, joined up with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, who was in his corner in this Survivor Series match. Okay? Shawn Michaels also had a classic ladder match, the WrestleMania 10 rematch at SummerSlam of 1995, just a few months prior against Razor Ramon, who was on the opposing team. So there was that you could kind of chew on. Now, this is the more interesting set of circumstances when it comes to this match, but Jim Cornette and Mr. Fuji had representatives from their group on both teams. Razor Ramon had Owen Hart and Yokozuna, who were the WWF Tag Team Champions at that time. And then on the other side, on Shawn Michaels' team, the British Bulldog, who was also represented by Jim Cornette and Mr. Fuji. So you had all these variables and this different dynamic, and at one point, the 1-2-3 Kid, who wasn't even in the match, he had just recently turned on Razor Ramon and joined the $1 Million Corporation. He was kind of paired with Sid. He got involved and caused Razor Ramon to get eliminated. Sid ended up powerbombing Shawn and turning on him. But at the same time, the build-up heading towards that match was Shawn really wasn't trustworthy, so could he be trusted as well to play nice with his teammates? And then you had Well, whose side is Jim Cornette going to be on? Is he on the Yoko and Owens side, or is he on the Bulldog side? They're all a part of the same group. So you had all these different combustible elements that made for an interesting wild card match. And then you had the newcomer, Ahmed Johnson, who was pegged as like the future of the WWF at that time. He was the next, the blue chipper, the rising star. And it made for a fun match. And that's why it makes my number 5 on this Survivor Series top 5 countdown. Another match that came in also at number 4 on my countdown, as well as Justin's countdown, was from 2014, Team Authority taking on Team Cena. Now, here let me set the landscape, if you will. The Authority was Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, and they were kind of running things on WWF programming. And John Cena had kind of had enough of how they were running the show. Typical heel authority figures. They kind of hold the baby faces down. They have they play favorites with certain wrestlers, et cetera, et cetera. And so a match was made. John Cena would captain a team, and the Authority would have to find a team. And this was one of the rare times that Triple H was not involved in a match, but he was a focal point of it. And so Triple H had a hand-picked team where he picked Seth Rollins, Kane, Mark Henry, Rusev, and Luke Harper of the Wyatt family. And they took on John Cena's team of John Cena, Dolph Ziggler, Ryback, The Big Show, and Eric Rowan. And the stipulations were, if the Authority lost, if Team Cena won, the Authority would no longer be in power in WWE. However, and this is probably one of the more interesting stipulations, and I'll explain in a minute, if the Authority won and Team Cena lost, that everyone on Team Cena would be fired from WWE except John Cena, which to me was very interesting because it created a sense of doubt that are any one of these guys that Cena picked to be a part of his team, are they gonna play ball, and are they gonna, can they trust John Cena? Or I'm sorry, can they coexist? Because you're creating this divide and this dissension among this team. Can they all play nice with each other? The goal is obviously to beat the Authority so they can all keep their jobs. But Cena's the one that's going to walk away scot-free, win, lose, or draw. So is there resentment from any of these guys that Cena has handpicked to be a part of this team? Not to mention, the match saw the WWE debut of Sting. And this was the beginning of, we would see Sting, and his role going into WrestleMania that year, when naturally helping Dolph Ziggler and the babyface team defeat the Authority, and it sets up Sting and Triple H for WrestleMania. A really fun match. It went a little long in the tooth. It was probably close to an hour, but it was still fun nonetheless. Some of the takeaways I took from the match that I really enjoyed was, I think it was like the opening sequence, like the first, right after the bell rang, Mark Henry and Big Show are going to start the match out. Triple H is standing on the apron as if he's in the match, and he's getting Mark Henry all hyped up. Once he gets Henry hyped up, he turns around. Henry eats that right-hand knockout punch to the jaw by Big Show, and Big Show eliminates him immediately. And it really set the tone for some of the unpredictability that took place in the match, because nobody really saw that coming. But it made the most sense for Big Show to be the one to eliminate him, because it's Mark Henry. He's the world's strongest man. Big Show, he's the world's largest athlete. It just made sense. One of the other things that I know that I took away from the match that I didn't really care for, and it was Big Show's involvement in turning on John Cena and the team. If Big Show hadn't done so many babyface and heel turns over the years, and it wasn't so done so much, if it wasn't overexposed, I think this moment would have had a little bit more impact. However, the commentary from Michael Cole and the other announcers salvaged the moment when they speculated that Big Show did that so that he could save his job, because the odds were stacked against Team Cena at that point. There already had been a couple eliminations. I think Ryback was gone. I think Eric Rowan was gone. And so Big Show knocking out John Cena and letting the Authority get the pinfall, and then walking out made the match, added some more drama and some high stakes to the match, because now it was just Dolph Ziggler by himself. And Dolph Ziggler eliminating Kane and eliminating Luke Harper, and then it comes down to him and Seth Rollins. And that's when Sting shows up and saves the day. And I like that it was Dolph that did that, because Dolph was a favorite amongst a lot of fans, myself included at that time, and people wanted to see more out of him, and they wanted to see him in a better position. And I thought this was going to do that, and it didn't really. It just kind of kept him where he was. The follow-up wasn't that great, but I do believe that there was the match was exciting, and it made for one of the better, more recent Survivor Series elimination matches, and that comes in at number 4 for me. Coming in at number 3 for me would have to be actually no. Before I get to number 3, let me drop some honorable mentions that didn't make the list for me, but I wanted to share them with you all because I was kind of torn as to if they were going to appear on my top 5. If it was the top 10, they would have made it, but I decided to make this a top 5 countdown. Anyhow, one honorable mention was that I'd like to share with you is the first ever traditional Survivor Series elimination match, and that saw Macho Man's team taking on Honky Tonk Man's team from 1987. We saw Honky Tonk Man, Outlaw Ron Bass, Danny Davis, Harley Race, and gosh, who was the 5th? Was it Greg the Hammer Valentine? It might have been Greg the Hammer Valentine. I think it was Greg the Hammer Valentine. No, it wasn't Greg the Hammer Valentine. Who was it? I'm drawing a blank here. 1987. I'm going to Google it right now. Survivor Series 1987. Come on. Give it to me. Danny Davis, Harley Race, Honky Tonk Man, Outlaw Ron Bass, and Hercules. That's right. Hercules was the 5th man on that team. Anyways, long story short, it was a really fun match, set the tone for the Survivor Series matches. I thought it was interesting that Savage and Steamboat were co-captains of a team, considering that just a few months prior they had a classic at WrestleMania 3, and it was all over Savage trying to end Steamboat's career. So there was that dynamic. Jake the Snake, very popular at the time. Brutus Beefcake, adopting that barber persona, that was pretty popular. And just the energy in the match I thought was a lot of fun. Honky Tonk Man walking out on his team because he didn't want to face Savage, Steamboat, and Jake the Snake, who ended up being the sole survivors of the match. Like I said, really fun match. Great way to kick off the Survivor Series concept, but just didn't make the cut for me. Another match that did not make the cut, but it gets an honorable mention, was the Raw vs. SmackDown men's match from 2016, which saw Raw's team consisting of Universal Champion Kevin Owens, Chris Jericho, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Braun Strowman taking on the team of SmackDown, represented by the WWE Champion AJ Styles, Dean Ambrose, Shane McMahon, Randy Orton, and Bray Wyatt. A lot happened in that match. We saw a mini Shield reunion at one point. Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho with their Festival of Friendship, alliance that they had on television at the time. That was a lot of fun. Braun Strowman was starting to get hot as a singles act. Shane McMahon had that cool spot where Roman speared him in midair when he was going for the coast to coast. Ambrose and Styles, they had their issues. They were set to headline a pay-per-view, in 2 weeks following this match for the WWE Championship. So there was a lot going on, a lot of action, a lot of drama. Orton and Wyatt would end up winning and being the sole survivors. But, just not good enough to make my top 5. So I thought I'd share the honorable mentions with all of you. Coming in at number 3 for me would be from 2005. Raw versus SmackDown. That was the first brand warfare match that was adopted into the Survivor Series elimination format. SmackDown saw World Heavyweight Champion Batista, Rey Mysterio, Bobby Lashley, JBL, and Randy Orton taking on Team Raw, captained by Shawn Michaels with Carlito, Chris Masters, Kane, and the Big Show. Really fun match. I didn't really care for Carlito and Masters being a part of the match. I thought there was plenty of other big names that could be a part of that team with Shawn Michaels, Kane, and Big Show, but I get that they were trying to take some of the younger, not so established guys and put them in the match and kind of give them the rub, so to speak. I thought when you look at it visually on paper, SmackDown looked like a better team. JBL, former world champion. Randy Orton, at that time, a former world champion. Bobby Lashley, not really world champion yet. Mysterio, I don't believe he was the world champion at the time. And Batista, who was a hot act for SmackDown. Really fun match. Sequence at the end with Michaels running the gauntlet against JBL, eliminating him, then eliminating Mysterio, and then it comes down to him and Randy Orton, and Orton gets the best of him yet again. That would be the third year in a row that Randy Orton would end up being the sole survivor in a classic Survivor Series elimination match. And I also like the build-up towards the match, too, because in more recent years, and I'd say in the last 6 or 7 years, when they've done these Survivor Series brand warfare matches, it would come following a draft that took place a month prior. And you had these guys that would invade one of the other shows, and they were just on Raw, and they show up on SmackDown wearing the shirt, and they show up on SmackDown from Raw wearing the shirt. You were just on Raw 3 weeks ago, act like you have this big brand solidarity, and it just felt so contrived. And whereas in this case, in 2005, SmackDown invaded Raw because they felt like they were treated as the inferior brand, as the inferior show, which was something that a lot of fans online felt about the way SmackDown was being presented. And I thought it was a good way to start the brand warfare and the brand rivalry. And I thought that this Survivor Series match and the build-up towards it was very well done. The invasions from time to time when Raw and SmackDown would invade each other's shows, and they get involved in matches and finishes or whatever. And there were other Survivor Series brand versus brand matches on that card, but the main one being the 5-on-5 men's match that main evented that show. Really cool match. The finish at the end, Randy Orton wins. SmackDown celebrates with him, and then that's when we get the return of The Undertaker, which was totally unrelated to the brand warfare match itself. But nonetheless, it was still a fun match. That comes in at number 3 for me. Number 2, if I must say, I'm kind of torn because 2 and 1, I could put as my they could flip-flop and trade places. So I'm just going to give you the two matches that I like, and I'll determine whether they're 1 and 2. Now screw it. Okay. I on the Lost recording with Justin, I put this match at number 2. And he had this on his countdown as well. So I'll go with it. From 2003, Team Austin versus Team Bischoff. Now, let me set the stage. Eric Bischoff and Stone Cold Steve Austin were co-general managers of Monday Night Raw. And at that time, they had issues with each other, which stemmed from a real-life event that took place where Eric Bischoff, who was the head of WCW at one point, fired Steve Austin in real life. So they kind of used that to kick things off with these two. Well, anyways, they're co-general managers of Raw, and there's a power struggle politically with the authority figures on that show, and so they decided to form teams to represent them, and if Eric Bischoff's team would won the match, Steve Austin would have to leave the WWE. But if Steve Austin's team won, then he would stay in WWE, and he would be able to be what they call, as they've rephrased it, the old Stone Cold. Now, as the Raw GM, he was not allowed to put his hands on other athletes unless he was physically provoked. That was something that was an ongoing storyline that had been dictated by Linda McMahon and the board of directors, because they said that the co-GM just couldn't go around beating people up all the time. So Austin forms a team with Booker T, Rob Van Dam, the Dudley Boys, and Shawn Michaels. And Eric Bischoff's team is led by Chris Jericho, Christian, Randy Orton, the World's Strongest Man, Mark Henry, and Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner. Now, in this instance, this was an all-star match. All right, the best of the best on Raw. I mean, RVD, I guess you could say, and even Booker T to some extent, you could say were like they were pegged as like, up and coming. Not up and coming, but they were pegged, they were mid-card guys, but they looked like they were being pegged and groomed for, greater success in the main event. And pairing them with Shawn Michaels and the Dudley Boys, who were one of the greatest tag teams of all time, certainly helped to represent Austin, to be associated with Steve Austin. On the other side, Jericho was really a mainstay on Raw. Christian was starting to come into his own. Randy Orton had been red hot since, he was part of Evolution. Mark Henry's Mark Henry, and then you had Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner, who was impressive looking. I mean, it was an all-star match, in my opinion. And while there were some quick eliminations in this match also really built and took time. And my favorite part of this match is the sequence with Shawn Michaels at the end. Now, let me preface that by saying that Shawn Michaels' inclusion in this match was a last-minute ordeal. It wasn't until the Monday prior on Raw where Steve Austin had approached Shawn Michaels to join his team, and they used the history that Michaels and Austin had from the WrestleMania 14 match where Austin beat him for the title and kind of sent him into retirement for 4 years. They used that as a way to kind of give us some doubt that Michaels could be trusted, because Michaels had this, unresolved animosity with Steve Austin, allegedly. And so I thought that was a good way to build Michaels' role in the match, and then it was natural progression. It came down to Michaels on Team Austin, and he was down 3. Austin's team was down 3-1. So it was Jericho, Christian, and Orton that were left. And Michaels gets slingshotted into the outside ring post. He's bleeding. Covered in blood. It was a bloodbath. And Michaels, trying to fight from underneath, manages to muster up a last-minute super kick, eliminates Christian. Now they're down 2-1. Then Jericho comes in, and Jericho, you think he's got he's about to put Michaels in the walls of Jericho. Michaels counters it, rolls up Jericho, 1, 2, 3. Now we're even. It's 1-1. We're down to the last 2. And Bischoff ends up getting involved. Referee somehow is knocked out. I don't remember how. Bischoff gets involved. Austin shows up, beats on Bischoff, stuns Orton. Orton's out. Michaels goes to cover Orton. Referee's out cold. Bischoff is getting his ass kicked down the aisle by Austin when out of nowhere, Batista from Evolution shows up. Batista bombs Michaels, covers Orton. Referee comes in, makes the count. Your winner, Eric Bischoff's team, Randy Orton, the sole survivor. And that would be the at the time, the end of Stone Cold Steve Austin as the co-general manager of Raw. What got me is that's like one of Michael's best performances of his career and one of the best Survivor Series performances, in my opinion. The drama with Jim Ross on commentary, who was a friend of Steve Austin's, rooting for Austin's team to win because he didn't want his friend to be out of a job. It was just it's a highly emotional match, and what makes it in my top 5, and then like I said, it goes back and forth between 1 and 2. Okay, I put it at number 2 in this countdown for the purposes I've advertised the top 5 countdown, so I got to have a place for it. So it's number 2. But the reason why it's that high up, not only because of the performance of Michaels in that match, but that year Survivor Series, I was at my grandparents' house in Florida. I was visiting them. Both of them were very sick, and I went to go visit them. And for the majority of that week, I spent most of my time in doctors' offices and hospitals and different medical appointments, because of their medical conditions at the time. Both of them were battling cancer practically at the same time. And so I need a break is what I really needed at the end of the day. And I had decided that, I was going to go check out the pay-per-view at Hooters, because Hooters used to show all the pay-per-views for free. So I sat with a bunch of strangers and watched this show. And I remember when I watched this show, the energy in that Hooters for that match, like, if it was one of the very few times in my life where I've watched wrestling on television and I have been so excited that I felt like I was in the arena watching the match itself. I could probably count on one hand the amount of times that's happened in my life as a wrestling fan, and that was one of them, being in that Hooters in West Palm Beach, Florida, with a bunch of strangers, eating food, talking wrestling, and having a good time. And that match, everybody was into it. I even recall one of the Hooters waitresses getting into it, and she was kind of watching it too when she didn't have anything to do. So that to me makes number 2 on my top 5 list solely for the purpose of that. It was Michael's performance, and it was just a fantastic match. The story of Austin and Bischoff and their power struggle culminating in this moment, it led for a lot of drama, high stakes, and to incorporate the Survivor Series elimination format into it just made all the sense in the world. So that comes in at number 2. Number 1, okay? Number 1 on my top 5 Survivor Series elimination match countdown comes to you from 1987. Hulk Hogan's team versus Andre the Giant's team. Andre the Giant captained a team along with Ravishing Rick Rude, King Kong Bundy, the One Man Gang, and the Natural Butchery, taking on Hulk Hogan's team with Hulk Hogan as the captain, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, Don the Rock Morocco, Bam Bam Bigelow, and Ken Patera, the world's strongest man. This makes my number 1 because if you think about it, this show and this match itself, with Hogan and Andre being the centerpiece of it, is the result of a lot of things taking place moving forward that set the table for a lot of different memorable moments, all right? If you go back and you watch the match, this match was hyped up all about Hogan and Andre locking it up again. The premise of this show was all about getting another opportunity to have Hogan and Andre in the same space at the same time. And that stems from the memorable, encounter at WrestleMania 3 when Hogan slammed Andre and kept the World Wrestling Federation Championship in front of 93,173 people in the Pontiac Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan. I know it's been talked about to death by all wrestling fans, by Hogan himself, God rest his soul, and everywhere in between. That moment really launched Survivor Series, in my opinion, okay? Because nobody cared about Bigelow and Patera and Morocco and Orndorff. And nobody cared about Bundy and Gang and Rude and Butch Reed. Everyone cared about another showdown between Hogan and Andre, okay? And if you think about it, Andre's team winning and defeating Hogan's team, and Andre being the sole survivor, that is what set up the rematch between Hogan and Andre at WrestleMania, on the main event, which saw the title change with the twin referees, which then set up WrestleMania 4 in the tournament that saw Hogan and Andre have another match, both getting disqualified, sending DiBiase to the finals, and then losing in the finals to Randy Macho Man Savage, which then set up the Mega Powers versus the Mega Bucks at the very first SummerSlam. So if you think about it, WrestleMania 3 in 1987 was a launching pad for what we saw with Survivor Series, then what we saw with Main Event, then what we saw with WrestleMania, then what we saw with SummerSlam. So we're talking like a year and a half of storytelling that in some form or another saw Hogan opposing Andre. Okay? Now what was also made this match number 1 for me in my book was not only was it because it was the first main event of Survivor Series, but this was one of the my little brain at the time as a wrestling fan was conditioned to seeing Hulk Hogan winning all the time. Bruce Prichard jokes around on his podcast, Hogan must pose. You always ended the show with Hogan posing. And more than likely, it came after a win. Well, Hogan got eliminated. He was counted out after he was fighting both King Kong Bundy and One Man Gang on the outside, which then led to Andre the Giant eliminating Bam Bam Bigelow and becoming the sole survivor. My brain could not handle that. I was devastated. How did Hulk Hogan lose? And the controversy surrounding that, it made me as a little wrestling fan, I was baffled. I was so distraught that Hogan did not topple the Giant again. He did it before. Why couldn't he do it again? And so it was one of the very few times on pay-per-view, especially in the early infancy of pay-per-view with WWF, where Hogan lost in the main event. Now, he didn't lose the title, obviously, because it was a 5-on-5 match. But it had such a profound impact on me at the time. I didn't watch it live, but I remember watching the tape. We rented it, and I was like, what? He lost? Like, how did he? That's so unfair. I was devastated. And so that victory for Andre was almost a rationale or an excuse to do Andre and Hogan in a rematch for the title again. So I believe on commentary too, they even mentioned that Andre and Hogan, that was the first time they'd been in the same ring together since WrestleMania 3. So it was hyped up. It was practically hyped up as a singles match, and then you just had these other 8 guys that were there to kind of dress it up a little bit. And I'm guessing, based on the health of Andre at the time, that this was an excuse to get them on screen, but you needed all these other guys to be a part of the match because Andre, to hide some of, Andre's inabilities physically because of his medical condition, because of his bad back. So that makes my top 5, and that makes my number 1 in my top 5 of Survivor Series elimination matches. Now, on our Lost recording, Justin revealed that his number 1 in his top 5 was the Alliance versus Team WWF 5-on-5 Survivor Series match from 2001. Now, I can't argue with him that the match wasn't very good. It was outstanding. Action bell to bell. Everyone involved played their parts, But the reason why it didn't even sniff my countdown, it didn't even make my honorable mentions, is because of the angle itself. I mean, everyone knows how terrible that Alliance angle was. It was not. It was. I felt it was rushed. They had a bunch of WWF castaways representing WCW and ECW, and it just it didn't sit right with me. Again, great match. Action was awesome. But I did not really care for the angle itself. And then even leading up to the match where Kurt Angle was with the WWF and then he turned on the Alliance only to be Vince McMahon's mole, and they had the controversy and dissension within the Alliance as to who's the mole. And some were even pointing the finger at Austin, but it was really Kurt Angle all along. It just... there was a bunch of talented guys in that match. I'm not going to argue that, okay? On Team WWF, you had The Rock, Chris Jericho, Kane, Undertaker, and The Big Show, okay? Hall of Famers. On the other side, you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, Booker T, Rob Van Dam, Shane McMahon. All Hall of Famers, okay? And it just... again, because of how terrible the angle was, in my opinion, it couldn't make my countdown. Now, I said this on the Lost recording, and I even brought this idea up on an earlier episode of Kicking Out of 2 where I introduced the Trading Places concept with Survivor Series, and this match was a part of it. The only way this angle, I feel, and I will die on this hill, okay? The only way I feel this angle could be salvageable is if there was a non-finish to the match. Let's say the final two were like The Rock and Steve Austin, maybe even Kurt Angle, right? Okay? Throw Undertaker in there, why not? This is like the final four, right? 2-2. And out of nowhere, coming through the crowd, is the NWO. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hollywood Hogan. And they lay these guys out. Chairs, baseball bats, spray paint NWO, cause all kinds of chaos, throw the referee out, hell, beat up the announcers. And at the top of the ramp, you see Vince. And you see even Stephanie McMahon, maybe, because she was part of the alliance at that point, right? Hell, even Shane. Shane's like, what the heck is going on? Actually, you know what? Take Shane and Stephanie out of the mix, all right? You got Vince at the top of the ramp, and he's just looking like, what the fuck is this? And then from behind, Eric Bischoff nails Vince in the back with a chair. And he throws up the sign to Hall and Nash and Hogan. And I give this credit to Justin here for this moment to kind of piggyback off of that. The screen goes black and white. The preceding announcement has been paid for by the New World Order. Boom. You end Survivor Series just like that. Now we don't have a winner. Okay? Because the stakes in that match were, whichever team loses, they're swallowed up. They're no longer in business. The WWF could be out of business. The Alliance could be out of business. Well, now the NWO and Eric Bischoff have ruined that. And you could include the NWO as this wild card into this brand warfare, if you want to call it. And there could be the mystery of, well, who's the NWO going to recruit now? Are they going to recruit somebody from the WWF? Are they going to take somebody from the Alliance? Hell, Bischoff could use the excuse that he came back with the NWO because Shane McMahon and Stephanie McMahon, they stole WCW right from under his nose, and he was what made WCW so popular, and he's here to take it back, and he's going to do that with the NWO. I swear to you, I think that would be something that would be so freaking cool. It would totally have salvaged that Alliance storyline 100%. And I think it would have made things a lot more interesting moving forward. And then maybe you could have eventually led to the brand split with Raw and SmackDown or whatever. And Justin brought up this great point too, that even though Survivor Series is all about like team warfare, I think most of us kind of expected a WWF versus WCW supercard to take place at a WrestleMania. I mean, when WCW was purchased a year prior, I probably said it myself that, we'll see the dream matches at WrestleMania next year. At least we hope we would. We never got that. But yeah, that was Justin's number one in the lost recording. I hope somehow my software had some sort of hiccup and this comes back and I can play this for you guys, because we were really like digging deep with these picks and with our discussion, and I'm just really disappointed that unfortunately it just couldn't for whatever reason I might have deleted it, or my software just might have said, yeah, fuck you, not posting that one. So yeah, that is my top 5 Survivor Series elimination matches here on this Thanksgiving double play. Before I close things out, I want to drop some quick picks for this weekend's Survivor Series event. As of right now, we have John Cena defending the Intercontinental Championship against Dominic Mysterio. We have Stephanie Vaquer defending the Women's World Heavyweight Championship against Nikki Bella. We have a Women's WarGames match featuring AJ Lee, Rhea Ripley, Charlotte Flair, Io Sky, and Alexa Bliss, taking on the team of Becky Lynch, the Kabuki Warriors, Nia Jackson, and Lash Legend. And over on the men's side, we have CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, Jimmy and Jey Uso against Brock Lesnar, Logan Paul, Drew McIntyre, and the Vision's Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, with Paul Heyman in their corner. Start with the women's match, the title match. I see Stephanie Vaquer taking it. I saw some theory out there online that maybe Brie Bella will be brought back and help Nikki win the title, kind of how she did 10 years prior at Survivor Series. But I don't think it's crucial for Nikki to get the belt. Maybe Vaquer wins the match, beats Nikki. Maybe Bree shows up afterwards, or maybe they set up Bree's return at a later date. But Vaquer's red hot right now. I think she's going to be their next big female star. I've said it before. She's what Rhea Ripley. I think she's gonna be what Rhea Ripley is now, which is mega over. And she's continued to improve her English with her mic skills. Her in-ring work is good. She's got a good look. I was at SummerSlam back in August, and there were little girls with, their face painted like Stephanie Vaquer, signs, T-shirts, even the horns that she wears when she comes down to the ring, the devil horns. She's gonna be a major star for WWE moving forward if she keeps up at this pace. So I see her keeping the title. Intercontinental Championship, Cena and Dominic Mysterio. I think it's going to be a really fun match, and I think because this is John Cena's last PLE, I'm more intrigued at the dynamic of where the fans are going to go with this, because this is Cena's last PLE. He's got one more date after this event, okay, and that's the Saturday Night's Main Event retirement match. And I truly believe that we're going to see this. We could see a 50-50 split with the crowd, because San Diego is Dominic Mysterio's hometown. And Dom has been on the rise since WrestleMania. Since he won that Intercontinental title, his stock has risen, and his popularity has risen to the point where he's been a borderline babyface at times. And you see a lot of shades of Eddie Guerrero where, like, even though he still cheats, the people still are into it. And he hasn't really changed anything. But depending on where he is and who he's wrestling, sometimes dictates the audience's reaction towards him. I think we might get a 50-50 split with the San Diego crowd. And I think that's going to create that dynamic, as Justin said in the Ghost recording, that let's go Cena sucks dynamic from the audience, because they're going to be able to do it one last time at this PLE, because Dominic's the hometown boy. So my prediction here, I think it's going to be a really fun match, and I see Dominic taking the win and regaining the Intercontinental Championship. I don't see Cena retaining it. I think, and this is a Justin made this bold prediction that Cena's going to lose this, but then somehow he's going to end up in the men's WarGames match. He's going to replace, let's say, Jimmy Uso, and he'll be the fifth and final member of that team at the last minute, and he'll help them get the victory. And Cena will, end Survivor Series on a happy note as a part of the winning team with Cody, Roman, Punk, and Jey Uso. And I'll get to that theory in a minute. But when it comes to Cena and Dominic, I personally think, okay, because of the way this tournament has been so contrived and so unorganic, in my opinion, okay, that I think this Dominic Mysterio Cena match at Survivor Series is going to, in the long run, is going to have more importance than the match at Saturday Night's Main Event with whoever faces him, whoever wins that tournament to face him at Saturday Night's Main Event. I truly believe that, okay? If I'm going to kind of, and I'm going to leave it at that, because I'll talk about Cena and the tournament at a later date. Moving on, women's WarGames. In the Ghost recording, Justin said there's a reason why Lash Legend is in this match, and she's here to eat a pinfall, and I think that's going to be the case. I think we will see the babyface team of AJ Lee, Rhea Ripley, Charlotte, Io, and Alexa win the match. I see that lately they tried to build some sort of tension between Charlotte and Rhea, and they've agreed to team up, even though despite the fact they have a history with each other. Charlotte almost wasn't going to be on the team. She walked out, but then she came back, and then they had that little meeting, that cinematic little backstage encounter where her and Rhea kind of decided to put their differences aside. I think that might lead to maybe another match with them at WrestleMania. I think they're trying to recreate the dynamic that Punk and Roman had last year Wouldn't be surprised if we see them kind of one-up each other in the WarGames match and top each other, but I do see the baby faces, led by Rhea Ripley and her team, coming out on top. As far as the men go, I wouldn't be against the idea that Justin brought up about Cena being the fifth guy. I do think, though, if you're going to eliminate Jimmy Uso from the match, I don't think it. I think it would be silly to do the injury angle aspect, where, let's say, the Vision take him out, as he's coming in the back door of the arena, or right before he's gonna come out to Gorilla, or go through Gorilla to make his entrance out there. I don't think that's a good idea, because that's been played out. That's been done to death. I do think that, given the way Jimmy's character has been lately on television, where he's had there's been some dissension between him and Jay and him and Roman, that it wouldn't surprise me if Jimmy's character, I shouldn't say it wouldn't surprise me. I would like to see Jimmy's character just say, you know what? I don't want to be a part of this. I'll fight with my family, but all your egos are getting in the way. Nobody can be on the same page here, and I'm not going to play the fifth wheel anymore. I'm done. I'm going to go do my own thing. And he leaves. And then now you could insert Cena into that slot as, the fifth and final guy. Maybe Cody, searches the arena and looks for Cena, or goes to make a phone call and says, hey, we could really use your help with this situation, et cetera, et cetera. I could see Cena winning that, getting that nod and that role. Or I could see maybe Cody making a phone call and Randy Orton ends up being that fifth guy. I could see maybe Jimmy doing this on, the Go Home SmackDown. And lo and behold, Randy Orton shows up, cleans house, RKO's all around, gets to Cody, kick to the nuts, RKO, and he walks out. And the heels, let's say, Brock sees this and he's looking to size up Cody as Cody's, coming to, and he looks to give him an F5 before he could even hook him. Braun Breaker comes in, spear, boom, 1, 2, 3. And Breaker gets the win for the team. And then you begin the process of Breaker's removal from the group, whether he does it on his own or whether Heyman and company do it for him. But yeah, if I'm going to predict, I'm going to go with the heels on this one. I'm going to say the heels win this, because I think there's also other avenues that they can go with the babyface team losing. Punk and Roman, they have history with each other. Now that Punk's got the belt, maybe they split off and do Punk and Roman at some point, whether it's WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, whatever. Roman and Jay. I mean, Roman and Jay have had a storied love-hate relationship on television. Maybe Roman blames Jay for Jimmy leaving, saying, well, you need to keep your brother in check. Maybe Jay blames Roman for Jimmy leaving because Roman pushed Jimmy to that limit. Maybe Roman blames Cody for trusting Randy Orton to be the fifth guy. I mean, the possibilities, I wouldn't say are endless, but I think there's ways that they can splinter off when it comes to the babyface's trajectory following a loss from WarGames. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the heels, the Vision, Drew McIntyre, Logan Paul, and Brock Lesnar winning the WarGames match. I mean, it's been a trend the last few years that the babyfaces win the men's matches, but I think this year, I think the heels are due, and I don't think it's going to hurt anybody if those guys get the victory. So, all right. With that being said, Thanksgiving is upon us. Hope you all have a safe, happy, healthy holiday. Kiss your loved ones. Be thankful for what you have in your life, because there are some that are less fortunate than you that don't have what you have currently. And some probably want what you have. So be thankful for what you have. love one another. And on that note, let's put this one down for the 3 count, and we'll see you all next time.